The Israel and Gaza war continues as it looks like we might start sending money over there as well if we haven't already. Plus, the AP building gets bombed, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on over in that region of the world. The FBI warns that a fake COVID vaccine card could land you in prison, so we'll talk a bit about that. David Hogg and AOC both come out and say that they will not stop wearing the mask just because they don't want to be considered conservative. And that's not a parody headline either, by the way. That actually happened, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. And Bill Gates left the board, possibly because he had an affair. It's going to be all this and more. Hey, hey, hey. Do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a bunch of news to get to because they crammed a whole bunch in over the weekend, just like they always do. It's a little bit all over the place, but we are going to get to it all, including this ridiculousness about David Hogg. I can't even believe that actually happened, but it happened. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to get through it, and we're going to do it all together, but before we get started, before we get into the news, head on over, check out my friends from the Freedom Scoop Media Group. Pardon our dust, we are still under construction as we are making out the finalized portions. So please go over there and bookmark our website, freedomscoop.com. Go over there and check that out. Otherwise, you can go over and head out and check out the other creators we keep on the site, The Generational Gap, The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. It looks like there's going to be another charity stream coming up. It looks like that is most likely going to be on the Generational Gap channel, but it's probably not going to be till August. They might actually try and hammer this back out for Memorial Day weekend, but I don't think... I mean, dude, that's a lot of work to do something like that, especially now that we've got other people involved as well, including our marketing genius friend, Elaine Joan, who hosts the RedNet Show with me. But watch the website and watch the Twitter for updates. Come back over, hang out with us. We will all be announcing it as we go along, and we will see what we can make happen. But absolutely, come on over there, check us all out, help us support great creators. Let's look in at finance for the morning. Starting with the Dow, and looks like I've got to shut my music off again because I've got dueling robots in the chat. That's awesome. All right, starting with the Dow. Looks like the Dow was up over the weekend. It was up over 1%, just over 1% on Friday, up to 34,382.13 points. And a lot of that, I'm sure, is being held up by Raytheon right now, too. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. Plus, you know, everything opened back up on Friday again because, hey, we got the gas lines open. Everything's going to be okay, guys. Go out and buy your gas and go back to industry and whatnot. So we had a little bit of a fall throughout the end of the week, and it ended up with a rise. But according to some of the articles I've looked at already, it looks like that rise might be going away as well. So we'll talk a bit about that. On your Bitcoin, well, buy the dip, you guys, because Bitcoin has dropped down to 45,662 US dollars and 40 US cents. It got hammered over the weekend, so we'll talk a bit about what's going on with that and what that means coming up here. All right, looking at the gas. The Costco is holding out at its 264 line, but they're one of the few. The Quick Trip on Mineral Point in Madison over on the west side. Also 268, the Woodman's on Gammon, also on the west side, 269. But it looks like everybody else is starting to jump up to the 279 and even up to the 289 mark. So your gas is on the rise once again, so I hope you got your tanks fueled, and hopefully this won't beat the crap out of your travel plans coming up. So we'll see what's going on, what's in there. All right, let's grab one here from IBD for you guys. Dow Jones Futures Fall in still tricky market, but ASML, and that's ASML, that's not ASMR, by the way. I think Brit's going to do an ASMR channel where she talks about liberty ideas, but she's going to do it in ASMR. Google Flash buys, Bitcoin dives on latest Musk tweets from Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures fell modestly Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq futures. The Bitcoin price plunged over the weekend, with Tesla CEO Elon Musk continuing his recent run of Bitcoin critical tweets. The stock market rally suffered losses last week, with breakouts in key sectors struggling, though the major indices bounced on Thursday and Friday. ASML, and yes, that's ASML, not ASMR. Google parent Alphabet, Maravai Life Sciences, Goldman Sachs, Nutrien held up well. All 5 stocks are in buy zones or flashing early entries, but they also boast relative strength lines at or near record highs. The RS line, which tracks a stock's performance versus the S&P 500 index, is a great way to spot the true leaders in any environment, including the current choppy market rally. The RS line, the blue line in the chart provided, also spots false leaders. Apple regained its 50-day moving average on Friday and showed some other positive technical signs, but the RS line for Apple stock is right at 9-month lows according to MarketSmith analysis. Meanwhile, investors don't need the RS line to spot Tesla as a laggard. Still, it's helpful to know that while Tesla stock hasn't quite hit a fresh 2021 high, its RS line has. Google stock and ASML are on IBD leaderboard. ASML and Goldman Sachs are on Swing Trader. ASML stock is also on the IBD 50 list. MRVI stock was on Friday's IBD stock of the day. Let's look quick at Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price on Saturday resumed its decline, falling below 47,000 and undercutting its late April low to the lowest since late February. Bitcoin rebounded to above 49.6 on Sunday morning, but reversed sharply lower again. Musk implied in a Sunday tweet that Tesla might have sold or will sell its remaining Bitcoin. He tweeted early Monday that Tesla has not sold further Bitcoin so far. Bitcoin tumbled to a fresh low of 42,212.56 early Monday morning. The most valuable crypto is currently trading below 46,000. Bitcoin peaked at 64,829.14 on April 16th. All right, let's look at the futures. Dow Futures fell 0.4% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures declined 0.4%, and Nasdaq 100 futures sank 0.5%. Remember, overnight action in the Dow Futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. China retail sales surged 17.7% in April versus a year earlier, but that was well below estimates. Industrial production climbed 9.8% in line with forecasts. So their industrial stuff is climbing. They're starting to make stuff. They're sending it over here for us to buy. We're not making stuff. So that's going to be a laggard somewhere down on the Dow as well. Let's have a look what CNBC has to say. Get rid of that. Advertisement. Dow Jones Futures fall 150 points, hint at more selling after Wall Street's worst week since February. From Yoon Lee. Stock futures were lower early Monday, following last week's sell-off triggered by inflation jitters, suggesting investors may be in for more selling ahead. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average pointed to an opening loss of about 150 points. S&P 500 futures were off by nearly 0.5%. Nasdaq 100 futures fell almost 0.6%. Media stocks were jumping in the pre-market on merger activity. AT&T is in advanced talks to merge Warner Media, which includes HBO, with Discovery, and companies announced Monday morning. The new entity will trade as its own public company. Shares of Discovery were up 16% in early trading. AT&T shares were 4.9% higher. Bitcoin was taken for a wild ride overnight Sunday. Earlier, the price tumbled below 43,000 after Elon Musk implied in a Twitter exchange that Tesla may have dumped its Bitcoin holdings. Last week, Tesla said it would no longer accept Bitcoin for car purchases due to environmental concerns, which is fucking hilarious, by the way. I was just talking on Snapchat with a friend of mine last night, and he pointed out that these people, they all go out and buy the electric cars. They have no idea where lithium comes from or where the battery packs come from. How many heavy chemicals, how many heavy metals are in these big electric car batteries, and how horrible they are for the environment if something bad does happen to them, plus the mining and everything else that goes with that, and all the fossil fuels that go along with the mining as well. And I pointed out the fact that a lot of these kids They think that Bitcoin is evil, and I know Elon's coming out and saying that Bitcoin is evil too because it draws so much electricity, so much energy to go mine. And yes, I understand as well that your computer, if you're mining Bitcoin, is working the fuck overtime. It is working overtime, plus the ledgers and everything else that go along with that. It is working overtime, which means it's drawing a lot of energy resources. But these people claim that the electricity from Bitcoin is horrifying, it's horrible, it's bad for the environment, and it causes power plants to run higher. As they go over to the yuppie grocery store in Madison and plug in their Prius C or their Tesla. You're starting to see where I might see some hypocrisy from this. So, yeah, there's that. Bitcoin then rebounded some after Musk later clarified in a tweet that the electric vehicle maker has not sold any Bitcoin. The price was last at 45,505. Shares of Tesla were off by 1% in pre-market trading. The rest of big tech was mixed in pre-market trading. Apple was slightly lower, but Amazon was higher. Wall Street came off one of the wildest weeks of 2021 that saw the S&P 500 fall 4% through midweek. Amid heightened inflation fears, the broad equity benchmark eventually rebounded and ended the week down just 1.4%. The tech-heavy NASDAQ composite, which got hit particularly hard by inflation fears, dropped 2.3% last week. The blue-chip Dow fell 1.1% in that period. All three benchmarks posted their worst week since February. Not only are last week's events a warning sign of how uncomfortable inflation prints can become, but also a warning sign of how overbought equity markets have become. Nikolaos Panigirtsoglou, a managing director at JP Morgan, said in a note. Data last week showed the consumer price index jumped 4.2% from a year earlier in April, the fastest rate since 2008, which intensified fears that the Federal Reserve could be forced to start tapering its easy monetary policy if higher price pressures are sustained. The Fed's minutes from last meeting, which will be released on Wednesday, could offer some clues on policymakers' thinking on inflation. Yeah, inflation is coming. They keep trying to tell you it's not coming, it's not going to be that bad. They keep printing the money, though. And your products keep going up because nobody's going to work to sell, to make the products. Nobody's going out there to put the lumber out there. Nobody's going out there to make the ammo. Your prices are going to continue to go up as demand goes up as well. So it's time. And, we talked a bit about it too, where Biden's come out and saying, come on, man. You can't sit on unemployment unless you're looking for work, man. Just get out there and do it, man, okay? Because if they don't get people back to work making stuff to ease some of these prices and ease some of the supply difficulties that they're having, then they are going to watch inflation go up and people are going to tank the market. The Biden admin is stupid, but they know what's going to be bad for them. Boy, do they know what's going to be bad for them. So we will watch that. We'll continue to watch what's happening with that and see what goes on with that. Let's go talk about the other side of the world. Starting with the Daily Wire. I know, the least objective news source that I could get for what's going on in Israel right now, but we got to start here. We got to talk about what they have to say here. And I've actually got a Daily Wire at the beginning and the end of this segment too. So, all right, starting with Israel eliminates terror tunnel, 163 football fields long, kills top PIJ terror commander. From Ryan Saavedra. The Israel Defense Forces killed a top Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in its latest strikes on Sunday night and into Monday morning, in addition to eliminating miles of an underground terror tunnel used by Palestinian terrorist groups. Senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander Hassam Abu Arbid was killed in an Israeli airstrike in the northern Gaza Strip Monday afternoon, as rockets fired from blockaded enclave continued to be fired towards the southern Israel communities. The Jerusalem Post reported. The IDF said that Abu Arbid was killed in a joint operation with the Shin Bet Intelligence Services, commanded over the northern Gaza Strip brigade of the terror organization, and it was behind the launching of the rockets and anti-tank guided missiles towards Israel. The strike comes as Palestinian terrorists have fired more than 3,100 rockets at Israel over the last several days, with approximately 450 of the rockets falling inside Gaza. The IDF also struck more than 9 miles of tunnels used by terrorists in a 20-minute long attack that featured 54 fighter jets dropping more than 100 precision bombs. And IDF says what's 9.3 miles, 15 kilometers. That's 163 football fields. That's 46 Eiffel Towers. That's 34 Empire State Buildings. That's 18 Burj Khalifas and nearly 2 Mount Everests. Our fighter jets neutralized 9.3 miles of the Hamas Metro Terror Tunnel system overnight. That's 9.3 miles that can no longer be used for terror. I'm terrified. I really am. Let's see. The IDF has published a video of its overnight attack against the extensive tunnel network called the Metro. 54 fighter jets took part in the operation, according to an IDF statement. Does not look like we have any audio. And that's one of the things too. I mean, with the grainy thermal footage, you really can't tell what they're hitting. Just that there's stuff blowing up. I mean, they could be out in the middle of the Arabian desert somewhere, just dropping bombs. I don't see where they're going after tunnels just by the images that they're putting up. But hey, it makes nice propaganda, doesn't it? Hey, there's some more. Also with no sound. That looks like they're popping buildings though, so. There's the tunnel that they're targeting, apparently. Yeah, I don't get any of this. I don't see where we can see anything that's going on with any of this. This actually might be a little bit more easy to do, easy to see something from. Let's see what this one is. IDF airstrikes in Gaza City earlier tonight. There are some intense IDF airstrikes to continue across Gaza from the north to the south, from the top to the bottom. Reports up to 100 strikes so far, according to the several outlets in Gaza. Included video shows some interesting secondaries after one of the impacts. So that's some of the video of what we're seeing from some of these airstrikes here. Let's read what the Associated Press has to say, which we'll be talking a bit about them a couple articles down from Fox News, but let's see what they have to say first. U.S. sending new aid to Palestinians as conflict intensifies. From Matthew Lee. The Biden admin notified Congress this week that it will send millions of dollars in U.S. assistance to the Palestinians aimed at promoting peace with Israel, even as violence between the two sides rages. As the conflict intensifies, despite U.S. calls for restraint, the admin notified Congress on Thursday that it will provide $10 million to Palestinian groups in the West Bank and Gaza to support exchange and reconciliation projects with Israelis. The recipients of the aid were not named. The State Department said Friday that the money is part of more than $100 million that the administration allocated to the Palestinians earlier this year, reversing a near total cutoff in support under former President Trump. In a notice to lawmakers obtained by the Associated Press, the U.S. Agency for International Development said the $10 million would go to support people-to-people efforts to bring together conflict-affected groups to address divisions that may be rooted in the group differences such as ethnicity, religion, status, class, or political affiliation in areas affected by conflict and civil war. It said the money would be spent mainly on cross-border projects between Israel and the West Bank and Gaza. but it also might include programs for Jews and Arabs living in Israel. The fighting between the two sides has been intensifying, with rocket attacks from Hamas militants in Gaza on Israel and increasing retaliation from the Israeli military. Violence between Arabs and Jews within Israel has also been increasing. The Biden admin has made no secret of its belief that Trump's approach to the Middle East, which alienated the Palestinians, was flawed and made prospects for peace less likely. The admin has announced $130 million in assistance to the Palestinians, which appears aimed at encouraging them to return to negotiations with Israel. So basically, we're spending a bunch of money off of there that, I mean, honestly, really looking at some of this stuff, it's unlikely when you start to see a bunch of money getting out there that a lot of this money goes out to the people. And it does look like there were $100 million that were slated for the people of the West Bank, but right now I'm starting to wonder if they even got some of the stuff as they start to throw rockets up. And some of these rockets are decoys. Some of them are the Palestinians trying to trigger either a release of the Iron Dome, which costs us, the taxpayer, by the way, money, at $70,000 a round in taxpayer U.S. money. Just so you know. But some of this is also trying to bait the Israelis into making a hot conflict, which it does look like we are going into hot war at this point. So a lot of stuff going on with this, and it looks like it's happening on our dime. Let's grab this one here from WITN 7 NBC out of North Carolina. Israel strikes Gaza home of Hamas leader and destroys the AP office. From Faris Akram and Joseph Krause. Israel slammed the Gaza Strip with airstrikes in a dramatic escalation that included bombing the home of a senior Hamas leader, killing a family of 10 in a refugee camp, most of them children, and pulverizing a high-rise that housed the Associated Press and other media. The Hamas militant group continued a stream of rocket volleys into Israel, including a late-night barrage on Tel Aviv. One man was killed Saturday when a rocket hit his home in a suburb of the seaside metropolis. With a U.S. envoy on the ground, calls increased for a ceasefire after 5 days of mayhem that have left at least 145 Palestinians dead in Gaza, including 41 children and 23 women, and 8 dead on the Israeli side, all but one of them civilians, including a 5-year-old, President Biden, who has called for a de-escalation but backed Israel's campaign, spoke separately by phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Still, Israel stepped up its assault, vowing to shatter the capabilities of Gaza's Hamas rulers. The week of deadly violence set off by a Hamas rocket on Monday came after weeks of mounting tensions and heavy-handed Israeli measures in contested Jerusalem. Early Sunday, Israeli warplanes struck several buildings and roads in a vital part of Gaza City. Photos circulated by residents and journalists showed the airstrikes created a crater that blocked one of the main roads leading to Shifa, the largest hospital in the Strip. The health ministry said the latest airstrikes left at least 2 dead and 25 wounded, including children and women. There has been no immediate comment from the Israeli military. On Saturday, Israel bombed the home of Khalil al-Hayya, a senior figure in Hamas's political branch, saying the building served as part of the group's terrorist infrastructure. There was no immediate report on al-Hayya's fate or any of the casualties. The bombing of al-Hayya's home showed Israel was expanding its campaign beyond just the group's military commanders. Israel says it killed dozens of in Hamas's military branch, though Hamas and the smaller group, Islamic Jihad, have only acknowledged 20 dead members. Since the conflict began, Israel has leveled a number of Gaza City's tallest office and residential buildings, alleging they house elements of the Hamas military infrastructure. On Saturday, it turned to the 12-story Al-Jalaa building, where the offices of the Associated Press, the TV network Al Jazeera, and other media outlets are located, along with several floors of apartments. The campaign will continue as long as it's required, Netanyahu said in a televised speech on Saturday evening. He alleged that Hamas military intelligence was operating inside the building. Israel routinely cites a Hamas presence as a reason for targeting certain locations in airstrikes, including residential buildings. The military has also accused the militant group of using journos as human shields, but provided no evidence to back up the claims. There's a lot of this going on right now, too, and honestly, yes, they're using the journos as human shields. That's part of the reason that if the intelligence is true, and by the way, I've not independently verified the intelligence, so I don't know if it's true or not, but if it is true that Hamas was operating in the building, and it does look like that's the general consensus at this point, if that's all true, then yes, it was Hamas using the Associated Press as human shields and Al Jazeera as human shields. But we also look at these buildings that they hit that have a lot of apartments in them, a lot of residential buildings, that apparently, according to the intelligence, already also have Hamas militants in them. What else are you doing there? You're using those as human shields. One of the things to notice about this country, as much as we try to stay off the world stage, is that we do put our military installations, for the most part, and I know that there are some exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, our military installations are far, far away from residential areas. Sometimes they make their own separate city just for the military. We've got one of those in Wisconsin. I think we've got a couple of them here, but we keep them far, far away from our civilians as much as we can. You know, at some point there's overlap once you bring the family and everything into the military base, but for the most part, yeah, the attempt is to keep everybody far, far away from the military operation, because if one of the enemies of the U.S. does get a big dick and decides that they want to blow it all off, we want them to take as few civilians with them as they can. And we do have the ability to scramble to a civilian area if that's what the enemies decide to hit at a fairly quick notice. But yeah, now we've got, and once again, I don't know who's the aggressor in this one here, because I've seen enough evidence to say that both sides are the aggressors, but we do have Hamas sitting over here, sitting in the comfort of buildings that house journalists and civilians, are going, you can't get us. That's the one that's going to get clipped. I know it is. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with this. Definitely a lot of stuff here. Let's grab one from Fox for you guys. AP torch for claiming they were unaware of Hamas intel operation in their building. Difficult to believe. From Yale Halon. The Associated Press came under fire Saturday for claiming to be unaware that they were sharing an office space with Hamas militants in Gaza, dismissing Israeli government's claim that the terror group was operating inside the media building that was destroyed in an airstrike over the weekend. Multiple international media organizations were reportedly based on the Al-Jalal Tower, among them AP and Al Jazeera. Occupants were reportedly notified to evacuate an hour before the building was attacked by the Israeli airstrikes in a retaliatory attack against the militant group. The Israeli Defense Forces, in a statement, said that the high-rise was targeted because it was being used by Hamas military intelligence. AP condemned Israel for the attack and claimed to have no indication that the U.S.-designated terrorist organization operated from the building. We have had no indication that Hamas was in the building or active in the building, Associated Press and CEO Gary Pruitt said in a statement. This is something that we actively check to the best of our ability. We would never knowingly put our journalists at risk. Pruitt described the news agency as shocked and horrified that the Israeli military would target and destroy the building housing AP's bureau and other news organizations in Gaza. But a 2014 piece from The Atlantic, written by a reporter in the region, detailed a long and questionable history between the AP and the jihadist group, critics observed. When Hamas's leaders surveyed the assets before the summer's round of fighting, they knew that among these assets was the international press. The AP staff in Gaza City would witness a rocket launch right beside their office, endangering reporters and other civilians nearby, and the AP wouldn't report it. The article reads, the journalists at the time claimed that Hamas fighters would regularly burst into the AP's Gaza bureau and threaten the staff, and the AP wouldn't report it. AP didn't know about the sharing building with Hamas for 15 years, one Twitter user responded alongside an excerpt from the Atlantic story. Doesn't say much for the reporting abilities if they missed a Hamas staging office a floor away, another tweeted. Users found it ironic that AP journalists claim to be professional newsmaking people, but we also don't know that a designated terror organization shares a bathroom with us. Difficult to believe that this crew turned out to be renting office space in a Hamas building, Senator Cruz's national security advisor concurred. So it looks like a lot of people knew about this right from the beginning. I can't independently verify this because I can't see the leases. I don't know who is what and who rented it out under whose name, but it does seem suspicious that everybody else seemed to know about this or are pretending that they already knew about this before any of all of this started. So a lot of stuff to watch there. Let's keep going. I've got one from the BBC. Israel-Gaza conflict. Netanyahu says strikes to continue at full force. I have got no author given, it looks like. We are acting now, for as long as necessary, to restore calm. It will take time, Mr. Netanyahu warned. Gaza officials said 42 people, including 16 women and 10 children, died in the latest Israeli airstrikes. 10 people, including 2 children, have been killed in rocket attacks on Israel since Monday, Israel said. The overall death toll in Gaza now stands at 197 people, including 58 children and 34 women, with 1,235 injured, according to the Hamas-controlled health ministry. Israel says dozens of militants are among the dead. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting with the international mediators hoping to broker a ceasefire. UN Security General Antonio Guterres opened the meeting by describing the violence as utterly appalling and said the fighting must stop immediately. The Israeli airstrikes hit a busy street in Gaza just after midnight on Sunday, causing at least 3 buildings to collapse and dozens of deaths. Hamas launched a barrage of rockets toward the southern Israel overnight, and during the afternoon, millions of Israelis scrambled to safe rooms or shelters as the sirens went off. Palestinians also tried to take precautions, but in the densely packed and poorly resourced Gaza Strip, many had nowhere to go. Riyad Eshkuntana told Reuters news agency that he put his daughters to sleep in a room of his house that he thought was the furthest from the explosions. Only one of his daughters, Susie, 6, survived the night. His wife and 3 other children died. I ran to check on the girls, Mr. Eshkuntana. My wife jumped. She hugged the girls to take them out of the room. Then a second strike hit the room. The ceilings were destroyed, and I was under the rubble. The Israeli military leader said it had been conducted a strike on militant tunnel system in the area. The tunnels collapsed, causing the houses above to collapse as well, leading to unintended civilian casualties, it said. So, man, a lot of stuff going on with this. And I'm terrified right now that we could be pulled into this war. Because we could get pulled into this war. We absolutely could be putting troops on the ground into this one here, especially given everything that we're seeing coming from this. So, a lot of stuff to see here. Here's the West Bank. There's Jerusalem right in the middle. Ashkelon, Lod, Tel Aviv, Ashdod, Gaza City. So the Gaza Strip, the West Bank. A lot of stuff going on here. That's kind of a map of where you're looking at. But man, oh man. I remember when we almost never heard about a conflict over in the Middle East. And how excited we were by the Abraham Accords. And here we are at the end of it. Let's grab this one here from The Blaze. Some of the reaction to some of this stuff here. Longtime CNN contributor tweets, "The world today needs a Hitler. Has a history of anti-Semitism." From Paul Saka. A longtime contributor to CNN found himself in hot water after tweeting, "The world today needs a Hitler." The inflammatory tweet, which could be interpreted as a call for the extermination of the Jewish people, was posted to Twitter on Sunday amidst the rising tensions and violence between Israel and Hamas in the Middle East. The CNN contributor quickly deleted the post, but it sparked social media users to comb through his Twitter profile. Adil Raja, who has written dozens of articles for CNN, also appears to have a history of posting anti-Semitic messages on Twitter. Donald Trump Jr. posted screenshots of the Hitler tweet as well as a CNN article that indicates Raja as a co-author, and his LinkedIn profile where he describes himself as a freelance contributor at CNN. "Hey, CNN, this one seems to be one of yours, but I imagine that surprises no one anymore," Trump wrote. There's the picture of the tweet. The now deleted "The world today needs a Hitler" tweet was just the tip of the iceberg. There were other tweets praising the murderous Nazi leader. "The only reason I'm supporting Germany in the finals, Hitler was a German, and he did good with those Jews," Raja wrote during the 2014 FIFA World Cup. Another from 2014 read, "My support for Germany is for what Hitler did to the Jews." One tweet from Raja's verified Twitter account said, "Hail Hitler." Yeah, this guy seems like yeah. This guy seems like a pleasant person, doesn't it? It's okay, though. He's with CNN. He can't do any wrong, and they can go back and scrub him for whatever it is that he wants. So, yeah. That's pleasant. But what do we see? What do we see from, like, Ilhan Omar? It's all about the Benjamins. And Rashida Tlaib from The River to the Sea. I mean, the anti-Semitism over on the Palestinian side, I mean, it's nothing new. And you can understand, they've been bitter enemies and fighting over a land border for 70 years at this point. So I can understand a little bit of the team politics off of this, but to come out and call for the extermination of people, that's where you're starting to get a little bit too far. And I think Junior was right on that one. I really think that that's a bridge too far, and he really was calling for the extermination. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on with that. Let's grab this one here from the Daily Wire. Pro-Palestinian convoy in London includes chants of "fuck the Jews, rape their daughters." From Beth Bauman. On Sunday, a pro-Palestinian convoy made its way through North London, shouting anti-Semitic tropes. "Fuck the Jews, fuck their daughters," a man with a microphone yelled from one of the cars. "Fuck their mothers, rape their daughters." We've got video. Let's listen.
Fuck the Jews, fuck their members, fuck all of us, fuck their mothers, fuck their daughters, and show them the pro for Palestine. Shut them out, rape their daughters, if you have to send a message like that. Sorry to our children in Gaza. Fuck the Jews, fuck their members, fuck all of us, fuck their mothers, fuck their daughters, and show them the pro for Palestine.
And to be fair, that's not what I'm saying. That's in no way the same thing as what I'm saying when I get into an argument with somebody or say, "and fuck your mother." But that's what we have going on with that. Not long after the video surfaced, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson took to Twitter to condemn anti-Semitism and racism. It was unclear if he was referring specifically to the video. "There's no place for anti-Semitism in our society. Ahead of Shavuot, I stand with Britain's Jews, who should not have to endure this time of shameful racism we have seen today," Johnson tweeted. Sajid Javid says this violent racism is not welcome in London. "I expect Met Police UK to make it a priority to arrest these dangerous hate mongers today." Let's watch another video, but I think it's going to be the same thing. Except they're going to bring me to a new tweet in a new window.
Fuck their daughters and show them the pro for Palestine. Shut them out, rape their daughters, if you have to send a message like that. Fuck their members, fuck all of us, fuck their mothers, fuck their daughters, and show them the pro for Palestine. Shut them out.
Yeah, this guy seems pleasant too. So, yeah, that's what's going on around the world with this entire Israel story. So it's a wild one here. There's another video of this and some of the pushback off of that, and yeah, it is wild. It's wild to think that, after the Abraham Accords, that we could possibly be looking at another war in the Middle East, especially over Israel. I mean, you'd think it could possibly happen because what did we say? What did we say right after the election, leading up to the election? Joe Biden has never seen a military action that he didn't like. In 47 years, he's signed on to every military action that's gone on in the Middle East. So You can't be completely surprised by something like this, but still. But that's what we see going on. All right. We got to shift gears, though. We got to move on and talk a bit about some of the other things that are coming off of here. Starting with Newsweek. Fanning showed up right at the right time for this one here. Starting with Newsweek today, fake COVID vaccine card bill could see makers fined $150,000 and jailed for 10 years. From Aristos Georgiou. Two New Jersey lawmakers introduced a bill in the state legislature that would establish severe criminal penalties for the production, sale, and use of fake COVID-19 vaccination verification cards. Under the bill introduced by Democrats Nicholas Scutari and Joseph Cryan, anyone who knowingly sells, offers to sell, or makes such fake cards will be guilty of second-degree crime punishable by up to 10 years in prison and / a fine of as much as $150,000. Simply possessing a fake card would be punishable by 18 months in prison, a fine of as much as $10,000 or both. The bill concerns cards that are purport to be issued by a governmental agency, such as CDC, to verify that an individual has received one or more doses of a commie-fucking-coof vaccine. Verification cards have so far been handed out to tens of millions of Americans who have received a commie-fucking-coof vaccination. The CDC and FBI recognize that fake cards are a growing problem, and instructions on how to forge the documents have proliferated online. Some individuals are already selling fake cards online, advertising them on social media websites, e-commerce platforms, and blogs, according to the FBI. You should never, ever make a fake vaccine card. You should never do anything like that. You should never, ever, ever consider anything like that. But if, for whatever reason you decide that you want to do so, one of the things to keep in mind about something like this is the fact that it's not about whether or not you're disseminating misinformation on your vaccine status. As much as Newsweek wants you to believe that this is what that's about, it's not about that by any stretch of the imagination. The problem that they're having is that little official government seal that's right down in the corner of the vaccination card. There's just that little seal that says CDC right down there on the bottom of that, and that's what they're concerned about, you disseminating the information that comes with that card because it's an official government document, because it came from the CDC. And I disavow anybody doing this. I completely disavow you coming out and doing anything like this whatsoever. But if, and this is a big if, you decided you ever wanted to do something like that because you felt uncomfortable with an experimental gene therapy vaccine, and that's what you believed that it was, but you still wanted to participate in decent society off of this, I mean, changing the letters around on the bottom would be enough to, or slightly changing the logo, just so you're not using an official government logo. But I completely disavow, and you should never even consider doing something like this. That's completely criminal, according to the FBI. But yeah, that's at this point, yeah, they're trying to scare you into saying, "Oh, well, we can't have this fake information coming out of here." No, it's about using the government seal, is what it is. So just change up the seal and make everything else look as believable as possible, and I completely disavow this kind of activity. All right. Let's grab this one here. Speaking of vaccines, I got a video on board from disclose.tv. Looks like I've got someone on Instagram. You're not going to be able to see or hear this video just because of the way that I've got everything set up, but the link in my bio will bring you to the YouTube channel where I'm transmitting the same video in the same program where you'll be able to see it. But let's go grab disclose.tv. It says Rio de Janeiro's landmark Christ the Redeemer was lit up with a message promoting vaccines. Let's have a look at that. It's not a cult, people. It's not a cult. Just remember that. Well, a lot of people right in the beginning too were pointing out the fact that you looked at it at the beginning of the video and it showed the vaccine saves, and it doesn't look like they wrote anything on the statue. It does look like they're doing this with light projectors instead. So, but it looks like also, as you see from halfway through the video, they changed the language on it. Now it's vacina salva, Spanish for vaccine. I'm sorry, that's Portuguese for vaccine saves. Which that was one of the questions that was going through the comments of if this is in predominantly Portuguese-speaking Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, why would they do this in English except for a virtue signal? But don't worry, it's not a cult. MJJ333 wrote out, "Isn't this considered sacrilege?" And I actually commented back on that when I said, no, it's only sacrilege if whoever the non-woke conservative group is the one doing it. Otherwise, it's just par for the course. All right, let's grab another one here from Axios for you guys. A little bit more mask news here. Nurses Union calls on CDC to revise new mask guidance. From Rebecca Falconer. The largest nurses union in the U.S. called on the CDC Saturday to reverse guidance issued this week that allows for people fully vaccinated against the commie coof to go maskless while participating in indoor and outdoor activities. National Nurses United Executive Director Bonnie Castillo said in a statement that the new guidance is not based on science, does not protect public health, and threatens the lives of patients, nurses, and other frontline workers across the country. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky noted that when the guidelines were issued Thursday, that few people vaccinated against the coronavirus had become infected with it, that transmission seems rare still, and the vaccines seem to protect against known variants in the U.S. per the New York Times. The CDC did not immediately respond to the Axios' request for comments. A couple things that do go along with this as well, a couple things to look at with this. Now, also keep in mind, and this is some of the same argument that we had against Dr. Anthony Fauci, when it came time to talk about him and his decisions to wear the mask, lock down forever, don't go out again, and some of the concerns that we had about the economy all the way back in the beginning off of this. Keep in mind, with the nurses, they are taking the medical data that's been prescribed to them, when some of it is propaganda, some of it's based in reality, some of it's based in propaganda, but they're not looking at the economy side of this. They're not looking at anything else other than the health side of this. And that's a broad generalization too, because there are some that are individuals. I know I have very close friends with a RN down in Illinois, who's also close friends with another RN the both of them have very different opinions on vaccination, going out to concerts and whatnot, and masking and everything else, even though they work in the same department, in the same state, in the same hospital. And they've been longtime friends. They even have the same name, which is weird. But regardless of that, they're doing the same thing that Fauci does. Fauci's not an economist, which means that he should have had an economist pushing back against him to figure out where the balance was between shut the entire country down and shut the entire economy down, because there is a balance between the two of them. But instead, we just hear from the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases director, and that's the only information that we get, and part of that was because they were looking to crash an economy. Allegedly. But the same thing with the nurses. The nurses aren't looking at the banking side of this, the economic side of it. They're only looking at the healthcare side of this. And yes, given the information that's put in front of them, I don't begrudge them the fact that they're coming out here to push this. I don't agree with them, but I don't begrudge them the opinion that they have given the information that's been put in front of them. I don't. You are only as good as the information that's put in front of you. And I say the same thing about this. I'm not a journalist. I'm an opinion author. This is essentially an op-ed show. I don't have people on the ground at Freedom Scoop. I'd like to have people on the ground. Well, occasionally we get Steven out on the ground, or me going down to Kenosha or something like that. But for the most part, we don't have people on the ground. We'd like to, and every one of those donations you guys put in helps us get closer to that goal, but you are only as good as the information that's put in front of you. So, don't begrudge them. Don't agree with them, but don't begrudge them either. Let's grab one from the New York Post. Why the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez de-twitch. plans to keep wearing masks indoors despite the new CDC guidelines. From John Levine. Queens Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Wait, Queens? Queens? I thought she was Jenny from the Bronx. I'm sorry, Alex from the Bronx. I thought she was just from deep down in the Bronx, you guys. Why would she be Queens? Queens Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Honorable and Venerable D. Twitch, says she plans to keep her mask on. If you want to keep wearing your mask, do it, okay, puppy? AOC told her followers in an Instagram story earlier on Saturday. Personally, I'm going to keep wearing my mask in shared public indoor spaces, like elevators, subway, grocery store, etc. New York got hit so hard, I think that some of us are going to take time adjusting, Poppy, as we feel comfortable, she added. Mask wearing is something I'll probably continue doing overall from time to time. I feel like it might coming down to something, and I don't want to spread it. New CDC guidelines say that fully vaccinated people can go maskless indoors and outside. If you are fully vaccinated, you can start doing the things that stopped doing because of the pandemic, said CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky in a briefing. Well, I hate to tell you this, Rochelle, but I didn't stop doing any of that shit. I didn't stop any of that fucking bullshit. The agency, however, continues to urge mask wearing for certain crowded indoor spaces, such as hospitals, homeless shelters, and prisons, as well as on trains, planes, and buses. But I've got to agree with the Honorable and Venerable Representative of Twitch from the Bronx or Queens or wherever the fuck she's from. Wherever they want to put her at the time here. I personally have to come out in agreement on this one. Because if you want to wear the mask, then wear the mask. Absolutely. Wear it. Before the mandates went into place in Wisconsin, I thought it looked stupid. I thought it looked silly. I thought it looked foolish. When people were wearing around these painters' masks and cloth fashion statements, I thought that it looked absolutely foolish when people were doing that. But it was their choice. It's their body. It's their choice. So I came on here and I made commentary about it, but for the most part, yeah, just do what makes you feel safest. And if you want to wear one, then wear one. And if you don't, then don't. And if the business that you're going to requires it, you're on private property, you're on their private property, so still do it. Or go shop somewhere that doesn't have the mandate. You are free to vote with your dollars. You can pick winners and losers. The government doesn't have the monopoly on that. So go shop somewhere else. Yes, I understand. Walmart might be the cheapest place in the world to get your ramen noodles and your rice-a-roni and a pair of sneakers and 2 shirts and 4 candles, your aspirin, and 2 wall decorations all in the same place. But if you don't agree with what they insist that you do on their private property, then go shop somewhere else. But really, honestly, along with this, the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez D. Twitch is making a good point off of this, and she is bringing ideas in that make it seem like this isn't a virtue signal. I think it is still a virtue signal, but she's trying to make it at least seem like it's not a virtue signal, like it's actually her personal preference. But David Hogg kind of blew that out of the fucking water here because he's making it a virtue signal. From May 14th, Hogg tweets out, I feel the need to continue wearing my mask outside even though I'm fully vaccinated because the inconvenience of having to wear a mask is more than worth it to have people not think I'm a conservative. It's the virtue signal. It's the religious right at this point. You wear the mask. Otherwise, we will think that you are one of those evil ones over there. Hogg goes on to continue to say, I feel like this is something you can especially understand if you're in a very liberal area where 99% of the people you see are wearing a mask. And at that point, it's fuck you at that point because he's going out there because it's not about health, it's not about safety. It's about making sure that people know you're in the right camp. I wrote an article, and I've consulted this one before numerous times. I wrote an article back in 2013 after the Romney election where I started to see some of these divisions happening. And yes, this division didn't happen under Trump. As much as Democrats and progressives want to tell you this was going on long before Trump. I would say when I first started noticing these religious level divisions between conservatives and Democrats was probably under second term Bush is when I first started noticing it, which, given the fact that I was stuck in a very, very bad work environment, it was probably going on for years before that even. Maybe even in the second term Clinton, we were seeing some of it. I don't remember it being so religious as it is now, but social media fuels that too. Second term Bush was where I really started to see it take off, though. And right at the beginning of second term Obama, I wrote an article saying that we could be pushing for civil war, and they will have a token, some sort of token that you can hold, a mark on your hand. You know, the mark of the beast was one of the things that came into my mind. So they know what faction you're in, because this isn't North versus South. This is going to be within the same city, within the same family structure. A lot of this is going to be where some of the division and the fault lines are going to lie. And with that in mind, I don't think it's an armband, and I don't think it's going to be like a mark on your hand or anything at any point at this point. It's going to be the mask. If we keep going down the path that we're going down, it's going to be the mask. That's going to be the marker, whether you're on the good side or the bad side. So that's what we see going on with that. I've got one here from the Bee, because I thought you guys would be entertained, because, well, hell, this news cycle was shitty this weekend. From the Babylon Bee. Libertarians to begin wearing masks now that the government says they don't have to. Local libertarian man Bernard Paulson hasn't worn a mask the entire pandemic, saying it's his constitutional right to go where he wants, sneeze when he wants, and lick any doorknob he so pleases. But now, the CDC has eased up on the mask guidelines and says they aren't required for many situations. Paulson, wanting to show his rebelliousness and love for liberty, quickly bought a box of masks from his local liberal neighbor and started wearing them everywhere he went. What right does the government have to tell me not to wear a mask? You know what? I'm going to wear a mask forever. How about that? What you going to do now, big bad federal government? Are you going to come try to take my guns now? Huh? Paulson said. See, I don't know Bernard Paulson, but I do have a person in mind. And I'm not going to name names, but I do have a person in mind. I'm picturing a person just with this exchange. And it's a person that I very, very, very much enjoy the company of, so it is mostly teasing, but yeah. I know who this could possibly be. Alright, let's keep going. From CBS. DHS warns of violent extremists may exploit easing of COVID restrictions to plan new attacks. Let's read into this here, and I'm going to weigh in on this one. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas issued an updated terrorism advisory on Friday, warning of persistent threats nationwide. They have evolved significantly and become increasingly complex and volatile. The latest National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin comes as the department, created in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, looks inside its borders to confront an emerging homegrown threat that bubbled to the surface during the January 6th Selfie Fest on the U.S. Capitol. The bulletin also piggybacks an earlier NTAS release following President Biden's inauguration, set to expire on Saturday. Ideologically motivated violent extremists fueled by perceived grievances, false narratives, and conspiracy theories continue to share information online with the intent to incite violence, the bulletin reads. Friday's threat advisory also warns that violent extremists may seek to exploit eased COVID restrictions across the U.S. to conduct attacks against a broader range of targets after previous public capacity limits reduced opportunities for lethal attacks. They're fucking planning something. They are planning something. I looked at this, and that was the first thing that I saw is, okay, these people are planning something. Something's happening. This is something that's coming internally, And they've got an idea because they want people to go back and watch out for it or stay in their houses for fucking ever at this point. So I would be willing to bet, given the fact that Mayorkas is coming out of here, some mall in some red state somewhere, even if it's in the bluest city in that red state, some mall in some red state somewhere is going to get shot up by a person who's conveniently going to kill himself right at the end. Yeah. Yeah, this is completely grassroots, but hey, watch over your shoulder, you guys. All right, from the Daily Wire. CDC director hits back at ABC hosts, hints at vaccine passports. We were always going to get to a point where we could take masks off. From Beth Bauman. Do we have video? We do have video. So let's introduce this and we'll just watch the video. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky on Sunday slammed ABC News host Martha Raddatz for hinting that the federal government is considering implementing vaccine passports. According to Walensky, vaccines are allowing the country to move forward from the commie fucking coof, which is why masks were always temporary. Let's have a listen.
You said on Friday that the CDC is empowering the American people to make their own decisions about their own health. But this is all on the honor system. And there are people who refuse to get vaccinated, about a quarter of the country, and who oppose mask wearing, who could see this as a green light to go wherever they want, putting others at risk, especially in those indoor settings, including children and the immunocompromised.
So this is a really important point, and that is the guidance that we released on Thursday is about individuals and what individuals are at risk of doing if they are not vaccinated. If they're vaccinated, they are safe. If they are not vaccinated, they are not safe. They should still be wearing a mask or, better yet, get vaccinated. We also need to say that this is not permission for widespread removal of masks. For those who are vaccinated, it may take some time for them to feel comfortable removing their masks, but also that these decisions have to be made at the jurisdictional level, at the community level. Some communities have been hit harder than others, have lower vaccination rates than others. We wanted to deliver the science at the individual level, but we also understand that these decisions have to be made at the community level.
Well, it's a little bit of backpedaling and a little bit of walking at this point. So the masks were always going to go away. It was a temporary status symbol, and once again, it really is going to be used as a marker at this point to tell whether or not you're the good little boy who's going to do what the government tells you to do, or if you're the evil rebel that needs to be put down and taken out, and the evil rebel who's going to kill us all. And the passport was going to be another marker too, but that got such horrific blowback, especially from the religious community. And here's the thing. The passport was never going to be the mark of the beast. But you've got stress in the system where people, especially people who've been locked in their homes forever, have found religion. And then you start talking about the fact that you can't go out and engage in public services unless you have this little card or this little passport or this little digital scan on your phone. What do you think that's going to do to these people who were already against your agenda to begin with because of religious reasons? What do you think that's going to do in their heads? Seriously. What do you think these people are going to do when they look at this and say, hey, they want to make something where we can't go out and buy and sell. And they're openly talking about making you a second-class citizen. What do you think that's going to do in the minds of these people? I know what it's going to do in the minds of these people. But there you go. All right, let's grab one from Politico. Stefanik voted in as House GOP's new number 3 leader. From Olivia Beavers and Melanie Zanona. Elise Stefanik cruised to victory on Friday's vote to replace Liz Cheney as House Republicans' third-ranked leader, capping off a tumultuous month in the GOP conference sparked by its bitter divisions over Donald Trump. Stefanik won in a 134-46 secret ballot vote, defeating her sole challenger, Chip Roy, an unsurprising outcome after she aggressively campaigned for the number 3 spot, scooping up endorsements from top party leaders and Trump. I do not care one single bit about this, who is in Republican leadership in the House. Elise Stefanik does not represent my district. My district is represented by one Mr. Brian Stile. Elise Stefanik doesn't make any decisions that pertain to me because I'm not a Republican, even though I sometimes caucus with them. None of this matters to me except for the fact that we got rid of a fucking Cheney. And what's really important about this is the fact that we got rid of a Cheney who was in leadership and could divert funds to go and help make sure that she got reelected in Wyoming. I think she's going to get ousted from office at this point. She's going to get primaried the fuck out, and she's going to get ousted in deep red Wyoming, which is good. Get another Cheney. Get another one of these old guard neocon fucking globalist Republicans out of here who want to do nothing but go to war overseas forever and ever, just like fucking Glenn Beck. But there you go. Elise Stefanik is your third in charge of the House GOP. Woo. From Fox News. More Liz Cheney drama. Chris Wallace presses Cheney on Trump supporters. I alienate them. From Megan Henney. Representative Liz Cheney, ousted this week as the third-ranking House Republican, defended her outspoken criticism of former President Trump during an interview on Fox News' Sunday, and said that 74 million Americans who voted for him were misled and betrayed. Asked by Fox News' Chris Wallace about why she chose to alienate tens of millions of Republican voters who still support the Donald, Cheney said, "Those millions of people that you mentioned who support the president have been misled. They've been betrayed. And certainly, as we see, his continued action to attack our democracy, his continued refusal to accept the results of the last election. He conceded, you warhawk fucking cunt. You see that ongoing danger." GOP lawmakers voted behind closed doors on Wednesday to remove Cheney as the conference chair over her opposition to Trump's continued influence in the party and her repeated denunciation of the big lie that his presidential election was fraudulently stolen from him. And yes, it is a situation. Now, with Stefanik, I do hope that she takes and splits her time between representing the leadership of the Republican Party and the people of her district in New York. Because Cheney was not doing that. Now, as a representative, you do get a certain amount of autonomy. They're picking you because they trust the decision that you're going to make represents the people as the whole of whichever district that you're representing. You are chosen for that purpose because they don't have to come in here and tell you what it is that they want. You're supposed to know what it is the people want and vote accordingly. The people of Wyoming said, we don't want to vote to impeach Trump, and Liz Cheney did it anyway. And yes, if you are at 28% approval in your district, specifically your district, then you shouldn't be in Republican leadership. In fact, leadership of any political party should be hinged on the fact that you can maintain a 75% approval rating in your district. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't be in leadership. I would be willing to go down as far as 60. Because we're politically divided right now. But if you can't keep 60% approval in your given district, then you shouldn't be in leadership. I'm not going to go down to 50. But I would even go as far as 75. And she has that. She's 28% approval in Wyoming. So no, she shouldn't be anywhere near the levers of leadership. All right. I've got a Garrison cartoon for you guys I thought you guys would like. Forrest Satterfield tweets out, "What if we kissed in the Black Lives Matter horn?" And there it is. Those of you listening back on the audio platform, you're not going to get the imagery out of this one, even though it's great. You see over there on the left side, the vaccinated only screening side, the pronoun train with Pelosi out in front, Sie server, trans station. You've got the dwarf hiding behind Snow White that says, "We would never say the M word," as Mickey's punching the fuck out of Donald, says, "Take your Snow White privilege and get out of here." So I'm guessing mouse is a slur at this point. And Donald's getting his ass punched out for this. You've got the Black Lives Matter horn up over there. The socialism go around, free ride. Antifa land with the fire going up there. This was a based Garrison cartoon. I love that too. No Trump supporters allowed. This was an absolutely base garrison one. So, yeah, there's that. They've even got the Illuminati pyramid on top of a flying airplane ride. And I've never been to a Disney park either, by the way. So I don't know what a lot of this stuff is. No desire. I have no kids right now. I don't like big crowds, especially after the commie coup. I didn't like them before, but I don't like them now. So I don't know if I would ever go, except for if the Lord did bless me with kids at some point, I would bring them. I would absolutely bring them. But I've never been myself, even when I was a kid. So there's that. From NBC 29. Biden to meet DACA recipients in immigration overhaul push. Fuck you. This isn't an immigration overhaul push. You're going to keep them as pawns forever because then you can use them every time there's an election. From Amr Madani. President Biden planned to meet Friday with 6 young immigrants who benefited from an Obama-era policy that protected those brought to the U.S. illegally as children. The president is trying to turn attention towards overhauling the nation's immigration laws, but that's an issue that he has made scant progress on in the first months of his presidency. Immigration has been largely left on the back burner, while Biden has dealt with the coronavirus pandemic and pushed for legislative action on a massive infrastructure package. The immigrants invited to Friday's Oval Office meeting have used the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, instituted in 2012 to legalize their residency. Their residency, that's the key point of this right here. Biden has called on Congress to codify DACA and approve broader legislation. That's the other key to this. Codify DACA. Not path to citizenship. Codify DACA. We'll talk about that in just a second. That would establish a pathway to citizenship. No, it doesn't. Undocumented immigrants, an effort to that faces tough odds in a closely divided Congress. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki pushed back against the notion that immigration has slid as a priority, noting that Biden has continued through the early days of from the early days of his admin to have conversations with top aides on strategy to push the issue forward. She added that Biden viewed meetings with individuals helped by DACA, a program that has widespread bipartisan support among the American public, as a chance to highlight an area on immigration reform where there is a measure of the agreement with many Republicans. No, they're never going to legalize these people fully. Some of them might get a provisional here and there just to come out and say, hey, see, man, we're working on this, okay. But these people are never going to be legalized permanently. And that's where it is. Codify DACA. Not legalize. Not executive amnesty. Codify DACA. Keep these people in this program forever and ever. Because what can you do when you've got a second class of citizens who is in immigration limbo? And that's essentially what they are, too. They're in immigration limbo right now. They are in a position where they are neither legal nor illegal, which means that every time a Republican decides he wants to come up and run for president again, oh my God, he's going to deport the DACA kids. He's going to deport them, and he's going to have every right to. We can't let this person get into office. Oh my God, Congress, we have to have Congress at a veto-proof majority. We need to have Congress in there because they might deport the DACA kids. Look at these poor kids. They've been here as children. This was of no fault of their own. Meanwhile, half of them are older than I am. What was it before? Born on or after 82? I think it was, which I was born in 84. So some of these DACA kids are older than I am. They're pushing 40 at this point. But no, it's the same thing with illegal immigration. They're not going to do anything about this. A, they can't because they don't have the filibuster to do so. But they're not going to do anything about this because Joe Biden's buddies, his big business buddies out there, lose their slave class of labor. Their slave labor that they can sit back and exploit. And if they do try to complain about something, if they try to go to the boss and say, hey, SA, I think we need to have toilet paper in the bathroom, okay, SA? The boss says, okay, well, fuck you, you're deported. So low-wage slave labor coming back up from Mexico to do these jobs, and remain illegal so they don't have to get minimum wage and living working conditions. So, yeah, that's what DACA is going to be forever. Just another way to use these kids as pawns. And I've talked extensively about this subject too, because this is, in my eyes, one of the most deplorable government programs there is. All right, we got just a few more to get through. This is Saki talking about DACA illegals who are part of the fabric of who we are and what the American dream represents.
The president believes that DACA recipients are part of the American story and part of the fabric of who we are as a country and kind of what the American dream represents. So bringing them here is an opportunity to highlight that. The president believes that DACA recipients are part of the American story and part of the fabric of who we are as a country and kind of what the American dream represents. So bringing them here is an opportunity to highlight that. The president believes that DACA recipients are part of the American story and part of the fabric of who we are as a country and kind of what the American dream represents. So bringing them here is an opportunity to highlight that.
Which I actually can understand where she's coming from with that. I mean, she's lying because she's Jen Psaki, but she is lying at this point. But one of the things to look at with this is the fact that, okay, if you think these people are part of the fabric of who we are, then let's get them into a path to citizenship over here. Don't hold them in limbo forever. Don't hold them in limbo. Whatever. What a cunt. All right, let's grab this one here from CNN. Microsoft board investigated Bill Gates over an alleged affair with employee, report says. Translation, Bill Gates is no longer convenient politically for the people who are writing the news, so it's time to put him out to pasture. And he might Epstein himself too here as we go. This is from Rob McLean. Bill Gates' 2020 resignation from Microsoft's board of directors came after the board hired a law firm to investigate a romantic relationship he had with a Microsoft employee, according to new reporting from the Wall Street Journal. Citing people familiar with the matter, the Journal reported Sunday that a Microsoft engineer had alleged in a letter that she had sexual relationship over the years with Mr. Gates. During the probe, some board members decided it was no longer suitable for Mr. Gates to sit as a director at the software company he started and led for decades, the Journal reported. Mr. Gates resigned before the board's investigation was complete. The employee was not named in the Journal's article. CNN has not confirmed the allegations cited by the Journal. Microsoft received a concern on the latter half of 2019 that Bill Gates sought to initiate an intimate relationship with a company employee in the year 2000. A Microsoft spokesperson confirmed to CNN Business late on Sunday. A committee of the board reviewed the concern, aided by an outside law firm, conducted a thorough investigation. Throughout the investigation, Microsoft provided an extensive support to the employee who raised the concern. It's 2021. Is this just some big fucking Me Too thing? Either way, it doesn't matter because Gates is no longer politically convenient. He got him the vaccine, he got him the Bill and Melinda Foundation, and now it's time to get him with a Me Too and get him the fuck out of there as well. And yeah, with the divorce coming up, with his alleged ties to Epstein, it's no longer convenient to keep him around. So, there we go. Let's see. Oh, let's talk about some more Marjorie Taylor Greene. From everybody's favorite Democratic socialist, the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez D-Twitch. Rep AOC on Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is a woman who's deeply unwell and clearly needs some help, okay, puppy? Let's have a listen.
Yeah, it seems as though she had been posting some video. I mean, this is a woman that's deeply unwell and clearly needs some help. And her kind of fixation has lasted for several years now. It's at this point, I think the depth of that unwellness has raised concerns for other members as well. And so, I think that this is an assessment that needs to be made by the proper professionals. She said,
Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a plant. There is no reason whatsoever that a person who is a first-term congresswoman that has nothing but a yay or nay vote in Congress, because she's not on any committee. She can't do anything, and we will be talking about her later on as well, but she can't do a damn thing because she's not on committee. Should get this much media attention. She's a plant, so the mainstream media can come back up and say, oh, look, dangerous Trump supporter over here. This is what all Trump supporters are. And I don't think she's even believes half of her own bullshit. I think she's just being extravagant so she gets the media attention. Like a certain other person who is a second-term congresswoman at this point. All right, I got just a couple more here. This one is from the Associated Press. Mississippi justices toss voter-backed marijuana initiative. From Emily Wagster Pettis. Mississippi will remain in the minority of states without a medical marijuana program after the state Supreme Court on Friday overturned an initiative that the voters approved last fall, a decision that also limits other citizen-led efforts to put issues on the statewide ballot. At the heart of the ruling is the fact that the initiatives needed signatures from 5 congressional districts to get on the ballot, but because of Mississippi's stagnant population, the state has only 4 districts. Oh, so they're going to throw this shit out on a technicality. 6 justices ruled that the medical marijuana initiative is void because the state's initiative process is outdated. 3 justices dissented. The initiative process was added to Mississippi Constitution in the 1990s as Section 273. It requires petitioners trying to get any initiative on the ballot to gather 1/5 of signatures from each congressional district. Mississippi had 5 districts at the time that was written, but the state dropped to 4 after the 2000 census, and language dealing with the initiative process was never updated. Whether with intent, by oversight, or for some reason, the drafters of the Section 273.3 wrote a ballot initiative process that cannot work in a world where Mississippi has fewer than 5 representatives in Congress. Justice Josiah Coleman wrote for the majority in a ruling on Friday, to work in today's reality, it will need amending something that lies beyond the power of the Supreme Court. Translation: because of a technicality, the government can still put you in jail for a victimless crime, smoking a fucking joint. I think that it should just all be legalized at this point. And if enough states get on board to it, which Mississippi is getting into the minority at this point, if enough states get on board with it, then Congress is going to have no choice but to act either. Because they're getting to that point. So, there you go. There's your technicality for the day. All right, I got a couple more here. Then we will do rule of acquisition. I believe it's number 2. And head on out of here. Let's grab this one from Fox News. Shut up, autoplay. Where the fuck is it? There it is. Go away. Nobody likes you. From Fox News, Maxine Waters among lawmakers accused of abusing privilege of air marshals on flights. From William La Jeunesse. A program created after 9/11 to protect the flying public is being abused by Congress, according to an association representing federal air marshals, essentially creating, in their words, a VIP concierge service for members. The Air Marshal National Council, which represents some of the nation's roughly 2,000 air marshals, says the problem began after the January 6th Capitol Selfie Fest. Following that, some fearful lawmakers began requesting security, not just on Capitol grounds, but to and from their districts and even to vacation spots. The Transportation Security Administration, which runs the Federal Air Marshal Service, began reassigning agents from high-risk commercial flights to accompany members of Congress instead. This angered some sky marshals, as protecting the public is their primary mission. Capitol Police, and when necessary, the U.S. Secret Service, are tasked with protecting lawmakers. After 9/11, then President W. Bush gave the air marshals responsibility to protect the flying public, upping the number of agents from 33 to more than 4,000. Yeah, more government. Today, the program covers some 30,000 commercial flights a day. Air marshals can only be signed to high-risk flights. That means that have been deemed through our vetting process, vetted that have security risks. That's Sonia Hightower Labosco, Executive Director of the Air Marshal National Council. When these processes are violated and they're taken advantage of, and they're just tossed to the side now as if they don't matter, we're really looking into creating a major problem for ourselves in the aviation domain. So how many of these flights don't have an air marshal on them? That's what I'm concerned about, because there are 30,000 a day. How many flights are there a day? There got to be a whole bunch, because, I mean, that seems like that would be almost every flight manned by an air marshal. Some of the traveling lawmakers already have security details, while others have requested the service skip their scheduled flights, according to records reviewed by Fox News, which also told that lawmakers from both parties use the service, sometimes on official business, other times for personal travel. Labasco submitted a formal congressional ethics complaint for one such flight involving Representative Maxine Waters, who flew from D.C. to Minneapolis on April 17th to attend the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin. Labasco says Waters was already accompanied by 2 armed Capitol Police and 2 U.S. Secret Service agents when she allegedly requested 2 air marshals and 2 more marshals on touchdown to escort her to the airport. Yeah, that does seem a little bit like a concierge service, which, I mean, given the fact that the fencing, as far as I know, is still up around the Capitol. We haven't heard any mention of it in a few weeks, but as far as I know, it's still up there. They haven't taken it down. I know they moved it inward a little bit to try and lessen some of the area that's defended and give access to some of the parks there, but as far as I know, all that fencing is still up. And the National Guard is still in D.C. for the most part. And now these people are wandering around with private security as well, so a lot of stuff to happen with this, a lot of stuff to go on with this, but yeah, I can see Maxine Waters going and demanding this. So, there's that. All right, and I got one more here from NPR, and this will speak to people who are my age. I know, Chalaga, you're out there, same age as me, and you probably played this in school too. But let's see what NPR has to say about this here. A new spin on a classic video game gives Native Americans better representation. This is from NPR. Make sure, hey, donate to NPR. They need your money. They need your help. And the taxpayer money that they get doesn't help them enough, because they need to spread their progressive ideas and their ideals throughout the world. NPR, National Progressive Radio. It's not your money, comrade. It's our money. This was heard on All Things Considered from Anna King. Jazz Half Moon 38 remembers playing the educational video game Oregon Trail as a reward for doing well in class. It was on a super old computer, she says. The green screen was like the only color. She says it was really exciting, and the kids would often clamor and fight over who could play the game at their school on the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in Northeast Oregon. Half Moon says, I remember being like, oh, like the Indians killed off somebody in your wagon train, and then being like, oh, we're Indians, you know. A generation of kids like Half Moon grew up playing the settlers heading west on the Oregon Trail. They remember it mostly for the moment. Wait for it, their party died of dysentery. Now, a new spin on the Wagon Train game focuses on a more accurately representing Native Americans and includes new storylines and playable Native American characters. The company Gameloft tackled the redesign of Oregon Trail for Apple Arcade just in time for the increase in worldwide play because of the coronavirus pandemic. The game came out in April. Its target audience, the now 40-year-old original fans, and their kids, and more Native American players. Gameloft... Oh, go away, fucking donate link. Fuck you. Gameloft Brisbane creator-director Jared Trudgeon had to root out historical inaccuracies and cliches about Native American culture. Well, as a white middle-class Australian, I don't think I can really speak to that, he says. I'd like to help with that, and I'd like to talk to some Native Americans and some Native American history professors. So he brought in 3 indigenous historians. They listened to early test music for the game and said, back off the drums and flutes and don't use broken, stilted English. Trudgeon got it. It's like a trope to make Native American people seem primitive somehow, he says, when actually there were a lot of bilingual or polylingual Native Americans at the time. The team of historians came up with the more appropriate names for game characters and advocated for new roles for Native Americans, not just roles as guides or trappers. University of Nebraska historian Margaret Weddle has Lockcourt Orioles tribal ancestors. She researched old photos and drawings for accurate depictions of native tribes, clothing and style. Initially, all the native people in the revamped game had braids, Weddle said, and I think that we suggested maybe they don't all have to have braids. One major teaching moment for Trudgeon was about bows and arrows. He definitely wanted them. There are a lot of popular games out there, Tomb Raider and Last of Us, and like these big games where bow and arrows are sick, Trudgeon said. But historian Weddle explained that if you were a Native American trapper at the time of the Oregon Trail, you were more likely to have a rifle, so bows and arrows are an outdated stereotype. Well, that's going to add a whole degree of difficulty to things as well. So, yes, apparently the Oregon Trail is racist because of stereotypes and tropes and everything, which I do understand that there's a level of this as well, but I also understand that there's tribal affiliation that commands their men to have long hair, and sometimes, you hold it back in a braid to make sure that it stays out of your eyes while you're out and hunting. I've had long hair before. I'm in the process of having it again so I can go back and donate it for cancer patients, but yeah, I've had it before. I understand what it's like to have the hair in your eyes. I absolutely understand it. So, but we're getting, I guess, a new Oregon Trail. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, and that's going to be the end of it for the news today. And at the end of Monday's show, we do the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. So let's check in with Memory Beta and see what it is that they have to say, and then we'll head on out of here for the day. So, from Memory Beta, we looked over Rule of Acquisition 0 and 1 last week, because 0 we're going to throw out of it because it's authoritarian as crap. But we looked at 1 in detail, and we looked at number 2, and Rule of Acquisition number 2 states, the best deal is the one that brings the most profit. Now, to look back at Deep Space Nine culture, especially against the original culture of the Ferengi that was brought forward in Next Generation, the Ferengi were supposed to be this horrifyingly evil faction. They were going to be the antagonists for the main run of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but they really weren't that physically aggressive looking. They were kind of small, and they could be easily defeated with profit. We saw that even back in The Next Generation, but Deep Space Nine took it much further to a group of people who actually look at acquisition of profit as a religion. And they've got the rules. And of course, rule number 2 is going to be the best deal is going to be the one that brings the most profit. They always seek for the way where they can sell something for the most amount of money they can possibly get back out of it, while keeping their costs down, which is something that we should be doing in all of our own lives as well. So, looking in at how we can apply this in our own lives. To look at the best deal is the one that brings the most profit. The best deal for us right now is what's going to cost us the least, and it's not necessarily what's going to bring us the most profit either, because we're not always going to be buying and selling things. Now, I do intend to go into a career where I'm going to be buying and selling, or at least a job that'll keep the roof over my head while we continue to build Freedom Scoop. But not all of us are going to do something like that, but we can still apply this in our lives. Now, you look at what you can go out and buy. You can go out and buy some super cheap product that's going to fall apart in 2 weeks, and then you can go back out and buy it again and again and again. And God knows I've done that too. But usually for me, it's if I want to go buy something that's cheap to start off with, if I want to try something. Like wireless headphones is a great example. When I first started doing wireless headphones, I went out and I bought the cheapest possible pair of wireless headphones there was. Smartphones was the same thing. Instead of going out and getting a brand new iPhone at the time, I went out and got a cheap first generation iPhone off Craigslist, and I used that for 3 years. and I decided that I liked, I mistakenly decided I liked iPhone at the time, so I stayed with it for a while too, but I liked smartphones and I stayed with it, and, obviously you can't go back at this point, but I never, even if you could go back, I never would have wanted to go back. It's a very, very handy tool for me, and I can use that for business, I can use that for real estate, I can use that for travel, I can use it for all kinds of things. But quality is a big thing. Now, yeah, you can go out there and you can find something, that's going to be the cheapest thing you can find, and then you go back and replace it every few years. I did that with vehicles for a long time. Or you can buy something that's a little bit more expensive, but how much longer can you get out of it? Clothing, mid-level clothing too, because, if you're just going out and buying the label like Abercrombie, you're not getting your maximum profit out of it. That shirt's still going to fall apart eventually down the road, and all you're going to have is an empty wallet because you had to buy the most expensive brand out there. But, go to Kohl's, buy a $12 shirt, and get 3, 4, 5 years out of the damn thing. Maybe 10 years. I've got some shirts here that are 10 years out. The truck. You spend $1,000, $500, $1,500 here and there. You're replacing your truck every year, every other year. Or you go out and spend $16,000. Yes, that's a lot more money, and it looks like you're going to get lower profit, but how do you put a value on the years that you get out of this vehicle and the mileage you get back out of it instead? So the best deal is the one that brings the most profit, and you do have to balance. There's more than just the cost and keeping your costs down. If you can spend a little bit more money and get more use out of something, you've made more profit off of that. And that's how Ferengi rule of acquisition number 2 applies in our everyday lives. Absolutely. Go forward and seek profit, my friends. Let's get some music up here and let's head out of here. Where's my outro music? There's my outro music. Even this laptop here, just going back on that too. I had like $100 laptop that I was using, but I had to, go repair it, replace it every couple of years. But this one, $500, and what have I got? 5 years? No, 4 years. 3 years. 3 years of a laptop that is not meant to do what I'm trying to do with it right now. So yeah, that's quality too. I consider that good profit as well. So, all right, but we are going to head out of here for the day, you guys. Thanks everybody who came by and hung out and chatted with us in the live chat here. Remember, if you're just lurking, get those last minute messages in so I can make sure to give you thanks at the end of the week. I always thank the listeners. I just don't do it on the show. So I write everybody's name down. So if you get just one message in, I can give you a special thank you at the end of the week. So come back and join us later on tonight for the RedNet Show, or tomorrow for more contemporary. We've got a good RedNet Show too. We're going to talk about the pipeline. We're going to talk about Israel. I've got some surprise stupidity. We've got some Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be an entertaining one. And we always love having our wonderful co-host Elaine Joan over here as well. So come back and join us there. Otherwise, we'll be back here bright and early for more contemporary, and I promise I won't oversleep tomorrow, so we'll actually get back to regular start time as well. So, looking forward to seeing you guys here tomorrow morning, bright and early, for more contemporary. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.